The anime starts with a young man playing various video games. While playing one of them, he suddenly gets transported into the game world. There, a character named Eito, whom he used to play as, appears before him, much to his surprise. Eito confirms she is indeed who she says she is, and he discovers that the game he was playing while bedridden is a state management simulation game set in the dark world of Fantaria. Eito was his favorite character in the game, and she started talking about the king, which made him wonder, is he playing the role of the king? He thought she meant the leader of Minagura, but Ado clarified that he was King Takuto, who achieved many accomplishments in the nightmare difficulty stage. This was done using the civilization, said to be the most difficult to control, the Ruin civilization. He was also proudly the top-ranked player on the user leaderboards. This surprised Takuto, wondering how she knew all this, but Ato remembered everything and every request he made of her during the game, and that they had conquered the world multiple times and lost repeatedly, so there was no need to worry. Takuto explained to her that he used her style in the game because he wanted to become strong like her, and he was happy now to be talking with her. Ato felt the same wonderful feeling. Then Takuto looked at the sky and marveled at its appearance. He asked Ato if she had summoned him to this place, but she hadn't. He quickly concluded that he wasn't in the sky. Instead, it seemed to be the world of eternal nations, a place unfamiliar to Takuto. Ato wondered if this was called a miracle, and she approached him, expressing her love for the time she met him. She asked if they could start over, but he didn't know where they were. Eito thought it might be her world or a completely different world. Then she suggested, as they did before, that they start together anew to build their kingdom. Takuto was in complete shock. He didn't know what was happening to him, but he agreed to Ato's suggestion that they would start as they were before. He asked her to build their civilization, a kingdom for them together, which made Eito happy. Then she introduced herself, saying she was Eito the Protector, the child born from the Protector who would destroy the world. She affirmed that from that moment on, her mind was under the command of King Takuto. She asked him to descend to the lowest ranks, and Takuto felt excited and told her that their civilization was the most evil nation ever. Takuto asked her, so you know what Minagura needs to do first, right? Then they decided they would seclude themselves from the world and close their doors. After that, Takuto summoned a scout animal, but they were disgusted by the animal's appearance. Takuto sensed that their civilization, Minagura, was ancient and controlled evil and ruin, and they should always remember that before making any wrong move. Eito thought they should be careful about others discovering them, which was one of the strict rules of the game in the early stages. Then Takuto asked the scout insect to go out and discover everything near them. Ato warned it that if it disappointed King Takuto, it should make sure to complete its mission. The insect quickly set off, but Ato felt worried because the insect resembled one that performed its function as an obedient subordinate. Takuto discovered that he could share the insect's field of vision, just as he played, but this was costly, as it would require 100 magic energy, and they only had 100 points left. Building a settlement to serve as their primary base would require 20 magic energy points. Eito thought the cost was too high, and they shouldn't waste so much energy. Then Takuto suggested creating a warrior to fight for them, but that wasn't an option due to the limited magic energy. Eito gratefully told him she would fight seriously if she had to. Takuto discovered that Ato's strength would increase over time, but her current level was 3, meaning Minagura's current situation was highly dangerous, and any confrontation she faced could lead to its demise. Ato asked him to smile a little, then the insect continued exploring and Takuto continued to follow it. Through this, he was able to grasp the terrain of the surrounding area, and saw that it was covered with forests, but they hadn't encountered any monsters yet. Eito expected that forests were a good place for monsters to hide, but it was strange that none had appeared. While Takuto didn't see what he believed to be a source of food, he decided to continue exploring for a while. Eito saw that she couldn't offer much help in this, and apologized to him for it, but this wasn't important to Takuto, as he expressed his happiness that she was by his side. Ato was surprised by his words and approached him, touched by his wonderful speech. Suddenly, a group of dark elves appeared, not far from their location. It was a large group, and Eito thought they were in a fantasy world, and dark elves were usually neutral, but they tended towards chaotic evil. Therefore, it was comfortable for them. Takuto asked Ato if she thought this was the world of eternal nations, because if they found another settlement for their civilization, that would be bad. He considered the consequences of war, and expressed his desire to avoid it as much as possible. He felt they needed to hide at first, and Ato thought being next to another civilization would be very annoying. Ato suggested that if this proved to be the case, they should flee. Takuto agreed, because Minagura loved peace and harmony above all else, and Ato believed that war was a barbaric act in any case. Then Takuto decided they would observe these dark elves to gather information about the surrounding area. If they weren't lucky, they would flee, and Eito agreed with him. Then a number of dark elves appeared, surprising everyone. The scene was followed by a memory of these elves roaming the forest, their leader named Gaia. They had nowhere to go after being expelled from their lands, and their children couldn't endure. Gaia believed this forest was full of plants, and there must be food. But Emily knew there was a cursed forest nearby, on the outskirts of the unknown lands of Idroja. She remembered something being sealed in this land, and believed there was no flourishing life there. Gaia thought these were superstitions because the trees grew well, and he asked her not to give up. He told himself that he also shouldn't give up because his people were waiting for him, and he couldn't leave until he met Ado and Takuto. He returned to their present, and Takuto appeared in his eyes as a mass of great evil, which led to his extreme fear for his people and the soldiers as well. He couldn't make any wrong decision. Gia stepped forward and kneeled before Takuto, introducing himself as the chief warrior of the Mazaram clan, part of the Dark Elves. He apologized to Takuto for entering the king's forest without permission. Atu thought it was good that Gia apologized because he had invaded the land without asking. She asked him why he had done that. Gia told her that his clan used to live in the central lands of Itaragia. While he spoke, he felt at ease because they understood him, but she got angry and asked him to get straight to the point. Gia explained that they were expelled from their land and had nowhere else to go. He told himself it was wrong to try to sugarcoat the truth. Then Takuto asked Gia if their bodies were weak. Gia was shocked by the question but answered that the persecution was very harsh. He said they came to this land fleeing injustice because their food supplies ran out on the way and because they were trying to escape their pursuers. They couldn't get more food and hadn't eaten in a long time. Gia felt they didn't deserve all this suffering. The hardship wasn't rightfully theirs. All they wanted was to live peacefully somewhere on their own. Then Takuto offered them apples, surprising Gia. Takuto told them the apples were theirs and asked if Gia knew their taste. Gia replied he'd never seen them before and that their fruit was unfamiliar to him. He thought it was rude to eat in front of him without sharing any. But the other soldiers following Gia immediately ate the apples and really liked them. Takuto showed them apples in a different color, and Atu thought Gia should be grateful since Takuto was being generous. Gia pleaded with Takuto, telling him there were hungry children and elderly who hadn't eaten either. He said they might become skin and bones and wanted to take some apples for the rest of his people, preferring to offer it to them rather than eat alone. Takuto sympathized and gave him a lot of different food, which amazed Gia. He told himself that the Dark Elves fled from the light, which is why they're called Dark Elves, and that they live thanks to the Light Elves, forced to live in darkness away from the light. No one ever helped them, but Takuto gave them food and said it was theirs now. The Dark Elf soldiers thanked Takuto, and Gia asked about the king's name, but no answer was given. Next, we moved to where the other Dark Elves were, including a very sick woman. Her daughter told her that Gia, their leader, was coming with food. She was very sad for her mother, but when they smelled the food nearby, everyone's attention was drawn to it. Then Gia appeared, said he'd brought a lot of food, and told them to get ready to prepare it. The young and old ate and became happy. One of the elves asked Gia where he got the food. He said he found it somewhere. Takuto remembered that, and then the elves went to sleep while Gia stayed awake alone. Then the elder Moltar came to him and told Gia the food he brought was amazing, he'd never seen anything like it in his life. Gia agreed since he had tasted it. Moltar asked what had happened. Gia said he encountered mythical beings deep in the forest. Moltar asked what kind of myths. Gia wondered if Emilie had told him about a sealed creature in the Cursed Lands. Moltar asked if he'd met the King of Ruin. He told him about some myths and old books. When the world reaches saturation, the King of Ruin appears, bringing chaos and forcing people to start life over. He didn't know how true these stories were, but figured they couldn't all be lies. Gia asked Moltar if he was describing himself, but Takuto hadn't revealed himself to them, though he was scary enough to earn the title King of Ruin. Moltar asked if he spoke with this king, but Gia said he was beyond their understanding, though there was a young woman who served him. She explained some of the king's words, but Moltar wasn't convinced this was the King of Ruin, yet he wasn't exactly a good being either. After eating and regaining some magical energy, it became clear to him that this forest was unnatural, and he had to be careful. Moltar asked if Gia gave anything in return for the food. When Moltar learned Gia hadn't, he felt uneasy. Moltar criticized Gia, saying it's not normal to give gifts to an evil creature without getting something back. But all Gia did was explain what they went through when asked. Moltar wondered why someone like the King of Ruin would do this. Gia guessed it was out of mercy and sympathy for their situation. The king showered them with generosity, which angered Moltar because Gia bowed to him and became his follower. But Gia denied this. Moltar asked why he had knelt. Gia said it was a sign of respect, and he felt the king helped and aided them when they were starving. Moltar remained suspicious, thinking this was an evil creature, but Gia had no other choice. They believed they were able to argue now because their hunger was satisfied and that the king gave them food to fill their stomachs. Then Gia felt betrayed and asked what he should do. Moltar had no answer and apologized, saying he did his best. Moltar, as the leader of the Dark Elves and having lived over 2 centuries, would now negotiate with the king. It was natural for him to find a solution, and he awaited the day they could live in peace. Gia asked when that day would come. Then we shifted to Takuto, where Atu asked him to sit up straight. She asked how he could spend rare magical energy on something like this, but Takuto felt pity for them, which angered Atu because they were already starting to establish Mainogura and still didn't even know who surrounded them. He apologized to Atu for using magic without telling her, and promised to ask her first next time, begging her not to be angry. She denied being angry. Then Takuto told her he would fulfill any request she made, surprising Atu, who thought there was no need for such promises. Takuto told Atu he needed her and apologized for opposing her wise decision. He asked her to give orders as she wished, but Atu told him he hadn't been able to talk smoothly with the elves. While he spoke easily with her, words words failed him when facing others. Atu thought he was playing the role of a strict leader who despised long speeches and left detailed negotiations to his followers. Takto realized he was bad at communication and started to cry, which made Atu very sad, and she asked him to stop crying. Moltar saw that showing Takto the food would bring ruin and make everyone start over. Moltar asked Gia if he was ready to meet this king again. Moltar didn't know what he would ask of them in return for the charity he had given them, but Gia was sure he hadn't talked about that. Moltar asked Gia if he was sure about something like that and told him that demanding compensation from an evil being was a given, but it was also true that they had to borrow the king's power in order to survive. Gia saw that even if they left this forest, they would return to a life of wandering again and would suffer to find food, and that would be their end. But Moltar thought they had come here to live in a world free from oppression, but this might be their last chance, and asked him to go to him because the future of their people rested on their shoulders. They were being watched by Takto's insect follower. Then we moved to Takto's headquarters. The insect moved to them to deliver the news, but Ado was talking to Takto for a while, but Takto was the one who asked the insect to come to them. After the insect told Takto something, Takto understood that the elves were on their way to him. Ado thought they were coming because of the food he had given them yesterday, and that he shouldn't have given it all at once. But Takto expected that the presence of people with different ideas and another culture nearby might lead to conflicts, and that he wanted to take the rest of the food from them and leave immediately. Ado asked Takto if he was worried about something. Takto was worried that he didn't want to negotiate and communicate, so he wasn't good at negotiations. Then Ato asked to take over these negotiations instead of him. This would show Takto as a dear king to all of them. Takto was grateful to her for this and asked her if she was sure about this. Ado offered him allegiance and asked him if he needed anything. She was at his service. She thought he saw her as unqualified to handle this, but that wasn't Takto's problem, and he depended on her very much, which made Ado happy. Then Moltar and Gia went to Takto and began to thank him for the food. Moltar introduced himself to Takto. Ado saw that Moltar showed respect as it should be and asked him what he wanted to say. Then Moltar asked about Takto's name to get to know him well, which annoyed Ato, but Takto agreed to this. Ado told them that he was the master of the world, the ruler of ruin, Era Takto, and warned him to always call him King Takto, which greatly astonished Moltar. Then Ato introduced herself and that she was of a lower status than King Takto, but they must be careful to show her respect while talking to her. Then Moltar promised them that he would engrave their names in the souls of their people. Takto felt comfortable and that things were going well. Ato allowed them to take the food and leave, because most of the food wouldn't last long anyway, which surprised Gia and Moltar. But Moltar asked how he could repay Prince Takto, but Ato thought this was unnecessary and suspected that they were unable to do something like this or offer something that might please the king, because they also lacked the necessary resources. Moltar was about to speak, but Ado didn't give him a chance to do so and saw that this was a hesitant position and asked them if they were planning to do something, but Moltar denied this aloud. Then Takto felt that things were going somehow and asked Ado to talk about the negotiations and whispered to her everything he wanted, which angered Ado because they were very bad at negotiating and saw that she shouldn't leave them like this and eliminate them so that they wouldn't be exposed to them after that. But Takto was confident that they wanted to build a mutually beneficial relationship, which surprised Ado. But Takto suggested that he accept a price that was satisfactory to them, rather than providing assistance for free, and that this would make them feel more reassured. Then Ado told the elves that Takto was determined to accept their offer in return for his generosity to them from before. Moltar told him that they were grateful to him. Takto felt that Moltar was worried about a trick because they stood by the evil, and Ato understood that the elves saw the king as a monster of darkness. But the elves denied this. Then Ato began to think about the return and resorted to Takto because she didn't know what to do. He asked her to tell them to introduce them to the outside world in the forest. Moltar agreed to this, and that he would show them everything he saw and heard as well. Then Ato asked them to leave the forest and respect their covenant, which made Gia tremble from hearing this. Takto expected Gia's actions to be much easier than Moltar's, but Moltar told them that the thing that would make them happiest was keeping them in the forest next to the king. But Ato told them that this was forbidden. In addition to that, if they wanted to preserve the lives of the rest of their clan, and advised them not to mention what happened now to anyone else, which angered Gia, but Moltar asked him to calm down and follow the king's instructions. Then Moltar thanked Takto for allowing them to visit him, and they went. Takto wondered if he was right or not, and that he had abandoned them like this, and saw that there was a great opportunity for their destruction elsewhere, and there must be a move to reverse this situation. Then he asked them to wait and asked them why they didn't become his followers, which surprised them. Ado was shocked and asked them that she would consult with the king a little. Then she approached him angrily and asked him him what he was trying to do. Tacto told her that he had thought of using the asylum system, and that the elves were not inherently good or evil, and that if he accepted them as refugees and assumed that the matter was going as it was in the game, they should be evil creatures like them. But Edo saw that it was possible for gatherings of creatures with evil tendencies to coexist. Even though they were very different from the main citizens of Minagura, the demi-humans, and there was still a risk of a clash between them. Tacto expected there to be dangers already, but she had to remember what the demi-humans looked like, and asked her if she could bear to live with them as citizens. But Edo was sure that it was difficult to have a normal conversation with these demi-humans, because their appearance was bad for the mind. Thus Tacto thought they were compatible and that she would help him a lot if the information reached them. Then Atto told them that Tacto intended to establish a nation here soon and asked them if they wanted to be citizens of it, and promised them to provide protection for them. Moltar asked what would happen to them if they became his followers. Ato promised them eternal happiness. Then she told them that they would become evil beings and that they were free to choose their destiny, and told them that the situation was more fun with them if they wanted her opinion. Then they moved on, walking to explore the forest, and Atto asked Tacto to watch his step, but Tacto was fine, and she told him it would take some time for the thousands of their decision to follow him. Anyone else would think about it a lot before turning into a human being, but Edo told them they knew from the beginning what the best choice for them would be. She told him that their camp was there, and as they approached the spot of the 1,000, Moltar asked them to kneel before him. When one of the thousands looked at him, he lost his warning, and Gia asked him not to look directly at him until Tacto sat on the king's throne. Atto told Tacto that all the thousands were present and announced their acceptance as citizens in their new kingdom, Minogura. Atto asked Tacto if he was sure about this, and Tacto told her that all the conditions had been met and asked her to announce the establishment of Minogura officially. Then Atto told them they were now citizens of Minogura and that their happiness and safety would now be guaranteed under King Tacto. But Gia asked himself, is this all? They were told they would become villains, but he didn't feel any change. Then he felt hatred rise within him against those who burned them, oppressed them, and wronged them. Emily felt this too, but Gia's anger grew stronger. Tacto approached him and asked about his condition. Gia thought to himself that it was a joy to be under someone's protection. Then the thousands greeted Tacto while crying from happiness. After that, Tacto discovered he was stuck because he would start from a bad position on the continent, and he was very upset. He showed the map to Atto, clearly furious, and informed her of two major nations in the nearby village, one of them being the kingdom of Kawalia. Atto informed him that this people was loyal to Arlos, which meant they were a strong affiliate of goodness, and that the kingdom of Na, which the thousands loved nature, was also an ally of goodness. Tacto thought that if they discovered their evil nation, Atto anticipated that the situation would be fatal. Behind Tacto, they lacked the military strength to oppose these two great nations, and both felt a great sense of distress. But Tacto thought that not all news was bad. Usually, Mainagura had difficulty producing research, and Atto told him this was because their citizens, who were humanoid, were ultimately foolish. However, it was good that their fertility was high, and their happiness did not easily decrease. Tacto expected that the thousands could cover this weakness. After Atto understood, she heard the voice of the thousands coming to them to provide a report about the outside world. Then Gia told Tacto that he brought with him Emily, his assistant, because she was a smart woman with extensive knowledge of myths and other nations. He believed she would be beneficial to them. Then Atto informed them that the king was pleased with their dedication to work, and they would be appointed to key positions to manage the kingdom of Minogura. This was Tacto's decision without a chance of reversal, and Moltar would take charge of state management. Since he could use magic, he would carry significant expectations. Moltar accepted right away, and Gia would continue as the leader of the warriors and be in charge of leading the forces of Minogura. One of his tasks would be to recruit soldiers, and Gia happily accepted the position, expressing their readiness to kill the enemies and turn them into lifeless corpses. This made Tacto feel fear because war was brutal, and Atto told them that the king preferred peace and asked him to always remember this, questioning in surprise why the king of ruin was so peaceful. Ato then asked them to rest well so they could regain their strength because they would be tasked with building homes. Moltar told them he was very grateful, but he was more competent than Gia, who only cared about his strength, and he had more experience, which led to Gia feeling annoyed by this. Gia told the king that he was more energetic than Moltar and didn't need rest at all, and that Emily would also work hard. However, Atto saw that they were obsessed with work and asked Tacto if she could request them to gather resources at the moment. But Tacto anticipated the idea of improving the terrain and informed her that they had the potential too. Then she asked Moltar if they could gather wood, while ensuring the forest had enough left unharmed. But before Moltar accepted this task, He reminded her that they were a people living under the canopy of the forest, and that if he intended to erect buildings using massive trees, he would ensure meeting the king's desire. Otto was very optimistic about this, which surprised Gia again, as the King of Ruin did not intend to destroy the forest. Then Takto wished them good luck, and asked them not to forget to replant the forest, which astonished the thousands. Gia asked what replanting meant. Otto was surprised that he didn't know the meaning of replanting the forest, and asked Moltar and Emily, but they didn't know either. Then Takto discovered that the people of this world did not know how to build fortresses using magic technology. Otto then asked Moltar if he was aware of the terms magic and the 6 main elements. Moltar was aware of the 4 main elements, and he understood the basics of magic. Emily had never heard of the term military magic being used by any other nation. It became clear to Takto that they were very behind in magic technology. Moltar saw they were far poorer than their king thought. However, Otto believed they had a chance to surpass other nations if they advanced beyond them. She then told them that replanting was the practice of planting trees after cutting them down to preserve the environment, and it was an important step to ensure resources. But Emily did not think any method of their magic related to tree growth. Moltar expected the trees would take a long time to grow and would be harvestable, but Otto believed that replanting was a technology using the 4 main elements to speed up their growth. This wisdom was born from their great king, Takto, which surprised everyone. Takto found it very untrue, but Otto continued to tell them that the knowledge born from their king covers various different fields. She asked them if they realized how lucky they were for this blessing. Emily thought the apples she had previously obtained were food created by the king, and Ado confirmed this, though she preferred the grapes produced by the king. Emily also admired the grapes and found seeds in them, which she planted and eagerly awaited their growth. This astonished Atto and Takto, and Atto asked her if she had really planted grape seeds and if they had already sprouted. Then Takto asked himself why he hadn't thought of this before. The food created earlier was from the contemporary world, meaning he could use emergency production to create things not found in the game. He then executed emergency production and discovered that with this power, he could create gunpowder, basic metals, and even oil, but this required a large amount of magical energy. However, it was incredibly powerful, and he felt happy, while Emily was afraid of something bad happening. But Atto told her not to worry, and that she did well, and Mainagura obtained its second national advantage. Then we moved to one of the kingdoms on the continent, and its princess was playing the piano, swearing to the cursed forest, because the omen of the world was coming from there. Then the cardinal came to her and asked her to hurry with the preparations due to wild creatures appearing in the northern province. The queen agreed to set out, as she had to pay attention to this. We then returned to the thousands, who began planting seeds in the forest. The princess and the cardinal, along with a group of guards, moved out. One of the guards heard that the princess possessed a special power, but he hadn't felt it from her at all. However, the captain asked him to wait and see. As they were walking, a group of monsters appeared, heading towards them to kill them. But the cardinal asked the princess to act, while the soldiers prepared for the monsters. The princess cast her special spell, pointed her staff at the monsters, and burned them all. The cardinal was astonished by her power, saying it was like a deadly weapon. But something strange happened that astonished everyone. The princess possessed a power to completely repel evil and maintain a strong relationship with the kingdom of the elves. She buries her enemies in flames and bids them farewell with flowers, which is why she is one of the 7 great saints of the continent, named Soalina, Lady of the Blooming Burial. Then Soalina asked the cardinal about the matter they had discussed on the way, but the cardinal didn't know what matter she was referring to. She reminded him that it was about the signs warning of the end of the world in the cursed lands and the necessity of sending holy knights to investigate. However, the cardinal strongly objected to this, saying they shouldn't give attention to the cursed lands in the distant dark continent to the south, and that the leadership would not allow knights to be sent for this purpose. Soalina decided to go herself, but this decision made the cardinal extremely angry because Soalina didn't realize her status to do such a thing. He reminded her that she was no longer that simple village girl, but the cardinal told her he would send the soldiers under his direct command. When he left, he scolded her without her hearing. Then we moved to the forest, where Otto told everyone that it was now time for construction, which made the elves happy. Then she moved with Takto to his council. Takto was happy, and Otto asked him the reason for his happiness. He was happy about building his throne with the help of the elves, and that they did everything quickly, which was one of their advantages. Otto also told him that they had started building their civilization, and it would be strong, dominating the land and tearing through the sky. Then Moltaro, Gia, and Emily also came to them to attend a meeting. But before this, Emily asked Takto to accept this gift, and Takto immediately put on the clothes and was very happy because he finally got rid of his pajamas. Emily told him that they all worked hard to make the outfit suit him. Otto also liked the outfit and thought it suited Tacto very well. Otto told the elves that Tacto was extremely happy, which led to the elves' happiness. Then Otto told them that it was finally time to solve internal affairs, but Tacto was preoccupied with his throne and didn't pay attention to them at all. The elves were surprised by his behavior, but Otto tried to hide it and told them that they would start the meeting while consulting Tacto whenever needed. Tacto relied on them. Then Moltaro asked about the buildings they wanted to start constructing. Gia also made preparations like leveling the land and cutting branches, but Otto thought they should start by building a food production facility, and she believed that no one would fight a war with an empty stomach, even though they weren't planning any wars. However, Moltaro asked if Tacto could produce infinite quantities with his power, but Otto thought that Moltaro was burdening Tacto too much with this work, and that they might face distribution problems as the land expanded. Moltaro thought Otto was right and apologized for not planning well, but Otto had no problem with it because he understood her intention. Then she presented them with something strange in a pot, which surprised them. Moltaro asked what it was. Otto explained to them that it was a meat tree, one of their food production facilities, and it produced mysterious meat that tasted like human flesh and yielded a large crop. But Tacto thought this seemed evil. Moltaro understood this, but objected because some might be offended by eating human flesh. But Otto asked them to plant it temporarily as a start, and it would also need a hut for its administration and a building for food storage, and Emily would be responsible for this. The tree asked Emily to take good care of it, which made Emily scared. Then Otto told them that the second item was research, and since they were a small nation, they desperately needed to acquire the latest technology. Moltaro asked what technology should be prioritized. Otto thought it was magic technology, of course, which excited Tacto. Otto told them this, and Moltaro was also excited since he was a magic researcher like Tacto. He asked Otto what kind of magic they would be researching. Otto confirmed to them that it was military magic because ordinary magic could only target a few tens of people, but military magic allowed you to eliminate armies of thousands, and also allowed you to change the terrain to your advantage, in addition to other strategic uses, which surprised them. Moltaro asked if such magic even existed, but Otto asked him for some gifted individuals in magic to work on this research. Tacto expected that they would be able to develop it quickly because it wasn't very complicated technology, which made Moltaro excited about this magic. Then Otto moved to military planning, and Gia felt excited because it was his turn and he had to organize an army. But Tacto interrupted him and asked him not to overfocus on this for now, which reduced Gia's enthusiasm. Otto thought that armies don't produce anything but only consume resources and magical energy, but Gia thought that their current fighting force had no power to protect the king, and Moltaro thought that worse than that was having bounties on their heads for being leaders of the Dark Elves. Otto realized that they were worried about someone chasing them. Tacto suggested that they produce a hero then. Otto thought this was a great idea, and the hero might require a high production cost, but barely required any maintenance, making him an ideal choice. Then Gia asked Otto what kind of hero. Otto told them that in Mainogura, there were several heroes serving under Tacto, and all of them were strong and possessed special abilities. There were several conditions that must be met to summon them, but they must be able to summon one. At least, Takuto thought that armies needing constant resources would draw attention. A hero could help them keep their secret. So, Takuto decided to produce a hero, and then they could relax. This led to Gia's gratitude towards Takuto. Takuto saw that managing internal affairs was very enjoyable, and Atu confirmed this to him as well. Then, he told them to collect magical energy from the citizens, and that this amount would be related to the citizens' happiness. The happier the people were, the more the nation would develop. Thus, Takuto would lead everyone to happiness. Then we moved to the continent of Itaragia. A soldier named Lonius wished for a safe return from the Dark Continent. Then Fertile came to him and told him that they had nothing to do, and that he had prayed enough. Then he asked him about the necklace he was wearing, but Lonius immediately hid it. Fertile thought he was wearing this ring as an amulet, and also asked him for the names of his wife and daughter, but Lonius thought it was none of his business. But he told him, annoyed, that his wife's name was Marcia, and his daughter's name was Mina. Then Fertile told Lonius that they would be traveling together for several days, and that he would be annoyed if he heard him repeat his wife's or daughter's name while he was sleeping. Then Lonius said to himself that Fertile was rude and impolite, but he possessed many skills and achievements. Fertile wondered why they were sending him to the Dark Continent, but Lonius told him that they were going to investigate the vision of Saint Soalina, and if they succeeded, they would be appreciated by the Southern Provinces Conference. But if they failed, he would be held responsible as an assistant Holy Knight. But Fertile saw that these forces were too weak to investigate Soalina's vision, and that they were the only two holy ones, and the rest of the soldiers were mercenaries. But Lonius thought it was very rare to conduct an investigation outside national borders, orders, so there were no standards for the size of the forces to be deployed. Fertile wondered what the leaders were thinking, but Lonius found it difficult to know what the leaders were thinking because they knew what was behind the scenes and must have had sufficient reasons to include Fertile with Lonius just before his journey. Then they went out to the mercenaries, and one of the mercenaries told him that they had been waiting for him for a long time, and Fertile was happy with the appointment of these mercenaries. Lonius thought to himself that Fertile would increase their chances of survival in this battle. Then we moved to the forest. Takuto was amazed by the constructions that had taken place, and saw the beginnings of his civilization in the game developing little by little many times, but now he was seeing it in reality, which was different for him. Then Emily told them that their building method was to build houses on trees. She also told them that the meat tree was growing at a good pace, and they would soon finish the food warehouse. They also discovered a water spring near them to secure a permanent source, and that this building was where King Takuto resided, and it was also the headquarters for the general administration for paper transactions. She thought that the Managura system should deserve a more imposing headquarters, but this was what they could do now, and it was currently this size. Takuto said to himself that this was a wise decision, and that she had accomplished tasks that he had not ordered, such as securing a water source, which he greatly appreciated. But more important to him were those 1,000 Dark Ones who were frail when they met them, but now they were full of life, and he was the one who gave them that opportunity. But seeing them like this made him very happy. Emily asked Takuto for his opinion, and that they carried out his wishes out of gratitude to him, and also in return for the mercy he showed them. Takuto told her that they were amazing and that he was happy he welcomed them as citizens, which made Emily cry with happiness. Then Emily continued to guide Takuto and Atu on their tour. Takuto felt relieved that Emily had regained her composure, and that no girl had ever cried because of him before, which confused him greatly. Then Emily told them that the meat trees were almost ready for harvest, and that everything was going well because of the high-quality equipment Takuto provided them. Takuto assured her that he would provide them with other tools for now, because he was worried that their quality would be low if they made them themselves. Atu saw that this would help them advance quickly, and that it was like cheating, but Takuto felt pleasure because of using abilities that seemed like cheating to impose control, and Atu also felt happy about this. Then the tree told Emily that it felt ripe enough to eat, which scared Emily, and Atu ensured the necessary food production to support the residents of Mainagura. Then Emily asked them to accompany her now to the water source. While they were on the way, Emily felt something strange in the forest. Then she was surprised by the shape of the spring they found. Then Gia and Moltar came to them and welcomed Takuto, and they came to build a water channel after Emily told them, but Emily thought that the water was no longer suitable. Moltar asked to take a look, but Atu assured them that it was suitable and drank from it, which surprised them. Then Atu told them that this field was called the Cursed Field, and this was proof that this land had become part of Mainogura's lands. Then Takuto asked them to take a deep breath, and when they did, Moltar felt his mind clear. Gia felt power flowing through his body, and Emily felt very refreshed. Then Atu revealed to them that they had become residents of Mainogura, and that they had now transformed from neutrals to evil, and they were granted the benefits of the cursed field. Moltar wondered what Atu meant by her statement, that she meant that this was not a safe environment, but it provided them with a more comfortable environment to live in as well. Then Gia drank the water and saw that he could drink it normally. Takuto told them that the cursed field was very suitable for defense, and soon all their lands would turn into this form. Atu assured them that all of this was the fruit of Takuto's power. Moltar expected this from a great king like him, but there was one problem, which was drawing attention to it clearly. However, Moltar suggested providing precise monitoring of the surrounding area for now, but if the entire area became like this, it would make it easier for their enemies to discover them. Gia suggested that they should form an army, but Atu wanted to reassure them that the king would produce a hero, so there was no need to worry. But Moltar did not understand the meaning of a hero after Atu had explained it to them before, but Atu thought it was better for them to see with their own eyes, and several days had passed since their arrival here, which was enough time for this. Then Atu showed her power, which surprised the elves, and she told them that she was also a hero, and that what they saw was only a small part of what she could do. She explained to them that those who are called heroes possess power that allows them to wipe out entire armies. Takuto explained to them that the hero's power was extraordinary and did not draw attention, and they continued to gain power over time even without doing anything, which surprised them. Gia wondered if Atu would grow stronger over time beyond this power. Atu told them that since they planned to remain in isolation, her power was sufficient for their current needs. However, Takuto told Atu that she did not have to destroy the forest to show off her power. He told her that they would talk about this later, but he asked her to make sure to clean up the forest, which made Gia feel very excited, and that he would help Takuto as well. Moltar acknowledged Takuto's power for the second time, and Atu's power as well. He thought that he should build a palace worthy of Takuto, but Takuto felt comfortable in his home, which resembled others' homes. However, Moltar saw that this was not fitting for him, and Gia rejected the idea of their king living in a home like the rest of the homes, and Emily would feel guilty because of this. Moltar thought it would be rude if he objected to Takuto's opinion, but he asked him to reconsider. Then Atu told Takuto that the cost of building the palace might be high, but it produces resources, and it seems that it will increase the happiness of the citizens, which led to Takuto agreeing to build it, and also the happiness of the elves, since he agreed. Takuto wished to obtain the floating castle someday, so it would be good to start early. Atu saw that the national heritage that could be built when the city reached its maximum level was indeed everyone's dream, and she thought that the floating castle was a city floating in the sky, but this was beyond the elves' imagination and difficult to imagine. But Emily saw that Takuto had fulfilled all his promises to them, and this meant that the floating city was not fitting for him. Then the elves thanked Takuto and renewed their pledge to King Takuto, and wished for the increased prosperity of Managura forever, which made Takuto happy, and the process of establishing the nation was going wonderfully, and he asked them to continue in this manner. Then we moved to the Holy Knights. They eliminated a group of monsters that blocked their way. One of the mercenaries thought there was no need for their intervention in the first place, but Fertile expected that this was just the beginning. Lonius said to himself that he wished their progress would continue at this pace in the Dark Continent. Verdel and Lonius continued on their way to the mission site. Verdel was impressed by Lonius's cleverness when Lonius decided to hire a band of mercenaries, but Lonius replied humbly, telling him he just got lucky this time. He also mentioned that most of the mercenaries are up north right now. Verdel got annoyed at the unrest up north, so Lonius explained to him that barbarians had suddenly appeared in the northern province of the Holy Kingdom of Qualia, raiding villages and causing a lot of damage. The Saintis and the army were sent to try to calm things down, but the disturbances are still ongoing with no sign of letting up. But Vargo, who is one of the mercenary men, had heard that the north is plagued with a lot of problems. Lonius asked Vargo not to speak about it like it was any of his business, though it really wasn't his business at all. Verdel then asked Vargo if they had no desire to go up north. He told them they could make a lot of money up there, but Vargo said that, while it would be profitable for him and his team, he hadn't gone because he'd heard there was a witch involved and preferred to stay away. But Verdel told them nobody really cares about the north, and that they themselves are headed south to the Cursed Lands, so he told everyone to be prepared since they didn't know what awaited them. Vargo knew Lonius well and trusted him. Then they went to the tavern, and Lonius asked Vargo about this witch. Vargo, with little interest, said it was just rumors, and told him people said the northern problems were her fault, but Lonius thought that was ridiculous. He'd even sent the Saintis up there, and there's no way one person could be behind everything that happened. Vargo agreed it was impossible, saying it was probably a bunch of heretics or something. At that point, Verdel cut Vargo off and told him to stop with the gloomy talk. Verdel finished his cup and ordered another from the waitress. Vargo asked Verdel if he'd been drinking too much, but Verdel told him to quit being nosy, and said he'd once read a saying, after taking care of people's troubles, at home with your family, take off your robes, which basically means after doing good work, you should relax and enjoy yourself. Lonius pointed out the saying is from the Book of Doctrine by Arlost, 3rd item, 3rd article, paragraph 4, and they'd learned from that section that they could only take a temporary rest from their holy duties with their family. It shouldn't be understood as a license to drink. Still, he took a drink. Verdel said that's just a difference in interpretation. Then Verdel asked Lonius if he wanted to get into a philosophical debate. The waitress brought Verdel his drink, and he was super happy, which led Vargo to make fun of them. In his view, these two supposed holy knights were supposed to be out investigating something important, maybe even an issue from the Cursed Lands to the Dark Continent. Vargo wondered what could possibly be so important. He asked Lonius if it was related to a witch like up north. But Verdel told Vargo not to worry, it wasn't that, but they did have some idea of what it could be. Vargo asked what it was. Verdel explained that it was the place the Dark Elves ran off to, and he figured the Elves' leaders were worried they might stir up trouble. Vargo understood and thought they couldn't just leave them alone, since the Dark Elves are notorious for assassinations and curses. Lonius added that if they managed to gather strength in the shadows, sooner or later they'd turn their swords on them. Verdel told Lonius to calm down, since they were just going to look into things for now. Vargo was pretty happy when he heard the plan and felt reassured. At this point, Lonius asked Verdel if he was sure this way of thinking was the spirit they should have as holy soldiers, risking their lives to wipe out evil. Verdel got angry at Lonius, telling him not to let glory blind him, because the time would come when such sacrifice was really necessary for holy knights. But that's not a decision to be made lightly when you have a family. That went for all of them. They each had a good reason not to just get themselves killed. Then he joked around again, saying he should have stopped drinking, and now he's just an old geezer preaching and drinking wine. Then Verdel stood up on the table and told all the soldiers they were heading out to the Dark Continent tomorrow so they could drink as much as they liked tonight. After that, the scene shifts to Takto, who was with all his followers, standing before the fruit of the flesh tree. Emily asked Gya if something was about to happen, but Gya had no idea, though he knew Takto had gathered them that day, probably for something related to the kingdom. Molter told them to stop talking because it was starting, and Takto cast a spell on the fruit, which made it turn into a long-legged bug, leaving everyone amazed. Moltar asked Takto if he could really create new life. Atu proudly declared that this was Takto's great power and that he had many more abilities. Their loyalty and happiness would give Takto even more strength. She told them to show their love for the king, leading the elves to cheer for Takto over and over. Takto then went to his throne, pleased that everything had turned out well. Atu encouraged him, saying she was glad they could use the regular production safely, and Takto agreed but felt even more relieved after everyone backed off and smiled, dodging their questions. He wondered what it all really meant, but Atu figured gathering resources and adding magic to them wouldn't be so easy, and there was no point overthinking things they didn't get. The important thing was, after the recent weather, they could now safely produce new units. Takto thought the next step was to begin the hero summoning. Atu said they'd need to gather a lot of magical energy for that. Now that they had a clear path, Takto said with 2 heroes by his side, he'd have all the fighting strength he needed. Atu asked which hero he planned to summon first. Takto thought he'd start with Isela, the Queen of Insects, which made Atu happy since Isela was so strong. Takto confirmed the Queen of Insects was one of the strongest heroes in Minagura true bug type, with the power to boost all insect units. That would make those long-legged bugs top-class fighters. Plus, Isela could produce larva units as a labor force and boost performance both in war and administration, so she was the hero they needed most right now. Atu loved Takto's idea. They desperately needed Isela, summoning her early so she could produce more units and grow their workforce. Getting more strength that way is a classic strategy. When you're faced with lots of unknowns, sticking to tried and true methods is the wise move. Takto agreed, and added that the other heroes had terrible personalities, so they really had no other choice but Isela. Atu remembered that one of them likes world conquest and another likes throwing everything into chaos, so every one of their heroes came with issues. Takto wanted to focus on internal affairs for now, so summoning other heroes now wasn't a good call, but he couldn't do without their powers and wanted to meet them all personally, so he intended to summon them all eventually, hoping they wouldn't cause trouble, since all he really wanted was to live in peace. Move on to the army of Fertile and Lonius, where a huge monster appeared before them. Lonius thought they were very brazen for attacking them during the day, but he expected that from the Dark Continent. Fargo then asked Lonius to help them out and tell them what to do, and then Lonius told them to ready their bows. But Fertile decided to handle it himself since they didn't have time to waste as they were already late. So, Ferdel stepped up to the monster, drew his sword, and told his army not to do anything. Then, Ferdel used the Sacred Sword Art spell, and Lonius realized this was Qualia's secret technique for gaining power. The monster tried to hit Fertile, but Fertile managed to split the monster's staff, leaving the monster shocked. Fertile landed several blows on the monster and finished it off with a powerful final strike. Lonius saw that this was equivalent to the strength of a small dragon, and a hill giant wouldn't even stand a chance. Then the monster collapsed to the ground, and Ferdel returned to his army's ranks. Lonius was very impressed with Fertile's performance and thought they wouldn't face any troubles in their mission with someone as strong as him. Then we switched to Takto, who was eating. Atu asked Takto why he didn't eat higher quality food, but Takto couldn't eat that. Atu gave Takto some advice, telling him he needed to eat healthier meals, but Takto got tired of hearing it and kept eating, saying he'd already had a lot in the hospital. Then Takto told Atu that he was worried about her, and Atu wondered why he cared. It turned out he was worried because she was only eating salad, but eating like that really suited Atu. Takto was surprised and thought to himself that she had really healthy habits for someone who acts so evil. Then he asked her, "Do you think things are really moving at a good pace?" Atu told him the elves were working hard to build the palace. Takto then remembered something important and asked Atu to call for Malter and the others when they finished eating. She agreed but asked what he wanted to talk to them about. Takto wanted to explain to them how to handle the long-legged bugs, since with their help, he could keep an eye on the area around the forest. Atu asked if he meant the nearby city as the area surrounding the forest, and Takto confirmed that city didn't belong to Qualia, nor to those countries allied to good. Atu explained to him that Qualia was far up north, and that it belonged to a different, neutral country in the east. They needed to decide how to deal with it. She figured they'd be the first to find out about their presence, since they were so close. Takto was happy the city was neutral. If it were allied to good, negotiations would have been impossible. But Atu expected that anyone else showing up here would be a problem, since you only come here if you have a specific purpose. Takto thought Atu worried too much, and explained that there were no signs anyone knew of their existence, so it was fine. But Atu wondered if, by Takto even talking about this, it would trigger an event in the story, just like he knew. Takto thought that was impossible though, and nothing would happen. Then suddenly, Tacto felt something strange. Atu asked, shocked, what was wrong. Tacto told her he sensed someone was coming toward them. He told her an armed squad was approaching the forest. He asked Atu to avoid drawing any attention for now, and also told her to go and send them away as peacefully as possible. If not, then a fight would break out. Atu agreed. Next, we go back to Ferdel's army. Lonius told them they reached the Cursed Lands and the Sea of Cursed Trees. Ferdel asked them to move further in. After they advanced, Ferdel asked them to stop. Suddenly, a girl appeared in front of them, walking up. Ferdel told her to stop and asked about her appearance and what she was doing on these cursed lands. Atu explained to them that she was a dark elf who'd fled into the forest for survival, and that she knew Ferdel was a holy knight from Qualia. She asked what brought them to this land, but Ferdel refused to tell her why they came and asked her to answer their questions instead, particularly about what she was doing there. The girl explained she lived there with her sisters, who had suffered a similar fate, but it didn't matter to Ferdel whether they chose to live in the cursed forest or not, as it wasn't their business. He told her their mission concerned only the forest, and that they'd be entering it, asking if she had any objections. Atu advised them not to do this, and showed her red eye. Lonius, however, got angry and said as holy knights they shouldn't be stopped. Ferdel told him to shut up since he was the one talking now. Lonius apologized to Ferdel, but was upset and thought to himself this didn't deserve such a scolding and that he had only intervened a little. Ferdel explained to Atu that they came to these lands for a mission and couldn't just turn back because she didn't want them to enter. Atu explained her sisters were frightened, that they had suffered a long, painful journey until they finally found a safe place to live peacefully, and asked them to show a bit of mercy. Ferdel saw that she was determined, so he asked if there was something in the forest. The girl answered it was just peace and quiet in the forest and asked why they were even interested in such a gloomy place. Ferdel got angry and said they came to investigate something important so that a disaster wouldn't happen on these lands, and they couldn't return until they had confirmed the truth. The soldiers were surprised, and Lonius told Ferdel that he'd revealed their secret mission. Ferdel got mad at Lonius again, told him to shut up, and said he didn't care whether it was a secret or not. There were times you just needed to tell the truth. Lonius thought to himself that this was a betrayal from Ferdel if he was a holy knight. His authority had limits. Lonius threatened Ferdel, saying he would report all this when they got home, but Ferdel didn't care. Atu figured out the secret and realized the holy knights were worried about a potential disaster. Ferdel confirmed to her that he was determined to enter the forest to find out the truth, but the girl refused again, shocking Bargo and Lonius, even after she'd learned they were holy knights. She showed her red eye again, told them there was nothing to worry about in the land, and asked them to understand and return to where they came from. But Ferdel was still determined to go in, saying they just needed a little time, and asked if it was possible. Atu begged them not to do this. Lonius was surprised and wondered if this was some evil energy and if Atu was truly from the Dark Elves. That confirmed to him that there was something in the forest and he needed to find out what it was. Ferdel asked the girl if there was any chance a disaster might affect them or their people, but the girl denied it, saying she was the one afraid something bad might happen to them, and she swore to him. Ferdel then ordered everyone to leave, which shocked Lonius, who questioned what Ferdel was doing. Ferdel told Lonius that they just wanted to live in peace, so there was no issue. But Lonius felt a wicked energy coming from Atu and wondered how he could trust someone like her. Ferdel trusted her, saying trust was part of their creed. Lonius asked, what if she was deceiving them? Ferdel told him not to let fear cloud his judgment, calling him lacking in faith, and said there was nothing wrong with this land, this was the result of their investigation. He began to move and ordered the army to return home. Lonius got angry and insulted Ferdel, saying he'd abandoned the mission and stripped him of his authority. Ferdel stopped, asked if Lonius was joking with him, obviously angry, but Lonius thought it was actually Ferdel who was joking, since he revealed the secret mission to Atu and planned to return without completing it. Lonius decided Ferdel was unfit for command and would take charge from now on. He ordered everyone to enter the Cursed Lands and investigate uncovering the truth about this possible disaster. Bargo agreed with Lonius's orders. Ferdel got angry and told Bargo to stop, but Bargo said he wasn't under his command anymore, and that Lonius was their leader now. The girl pleaded with them not to act recklessly, that they could still resolve things through dialogue, but Lonius told Atu to be quiet and threatened that if she kept interfering, they'd show no mercy, then ordered the soldiers to arrest her. Ferdel was angry, told the soldiers not to touch an unarmed person ever, but the soldiers went up to Atu anyway. Atu figured out that the negotiations had failed. After that, Lonius woke up from being knocked out, his arms covered in blood. He was shocked that the soldiers' weapons were completely destroyed and horrified to see them hanging dead in the air. Ferdel realized Atu was a cursed sorceress, which terrified Lonius. Atu told them everything had been going fine, but life doesn't always go the way you want.